Hi, today we're going to be talking about tension rings. I've got 3 different types here that I'm going to review, and they're going to be used in crochet. Now, I hold my yarn a little bit oddly compared to most people. I have a hypermobility condition called Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, and I know that I do hold it in quite an awkward way. If I crochet for too long, I get some pains around the inside of my hand. So I thought I would give these a go and see how they compared. The first one is a plastic type which has got little teeth inside for you to slide the yarn through, and then it clips closed. The second type is a pretty one. It's a little peacock, and it's metal, and in the photo that is provided with it, the yarn goes underneath the tail and around the back of the head of the peacock. The third type I've got is a basic metal spring with 2 little loops, which are supposed to help control the yarn and provide a bit of tension. So first up, we have got the little plastic tension ring. The first thing that I noted with this is that it's very small, has a split for you to slide it onto your finger, but it is still quite a tight fit. It does pinch my fingers a little bit if I wear it there. Now, using this, I did find if you just inserted the yarn straight, unless you use a really bulky yarn, it's not providing much in the way of tension really. The only good it would be for using several strands to keep them aligned. I found it was more effective if you actually create an S shape around the teeth of the tension guide and close it in place, and that actually does provide some tension. So I'm going to do some triple crochet or double crochet for those of you in the US and see how this goes. First impressions, it works if you do the S shape. It would definitely work as a yarn guide rather than a yarn tensioner, although being plastic, I don't quite know how long it's going to last. It feels like it could be a little bit more robust and certainly could be a bit more generous in the sizing department. Tension is even, and it did the job successfully. The next ring we're going to look at is this very pretty peacock ring. It feels fairly robust. It is adjustable with a bit of pressure, quite a bit of pressure in fact, but it is resizable. The photo of the product, the yarn is threaded underneath the tail of the bird and then up underneath the bird's head. So we'll give this a go and we'll see how this works. It works, but I found that it's made a little red mark on my finger. I had to push it down quite hard for it to stop sliding around and twisting as I was working. And I also found that I couldn't have it sat on the back of my finger like that. It had to be positioned around like this for the yarn to be angled correctly to come towards my work. I did notice that there was a bit of irritation as the yarn was pulling through the base of the tail, but it wasn't too terrible, but over time that might become quite irritating. The yarn I'm using is quite soft, so that isn't something that would be a problem. But if you used a coarser yarn, you might find that that becomes uncomfortable. Final yarn guide that I've got is a spring, and it has 2 hooks going through it. Now in the photos it's threaded through one and then the other, so we'll see how that works. So I think when you thread it you have to come from this way and around to push into the circle, through like that, and then under and pop it through. I've done 3 rows with the spring finger guide. It sits fairly comfortably on my finger. It feeds through. It didn't slip out of the loops, but I do feel like the tension isn't quite as even as with the other tension rings. It is robustly made. It's one size fits all. So I suppose if you've got slightly larger or slightly smaller fingers, you may struggle and it may spin around. For me, that's actually not a bad size, but I may just be lucky. I'm not particularly happy with the tension of it. It's not terrible, but it's also not as good as the other 2. And now I'll go through the pros and cons of each one. You can currently get these on Amazon for £5 for 5, so they're very cheap. They are quite flimsy. I don't know how long that's going to last. That's a very thin hinge there. It does work, not in the way that it's photographed. You could probably only use 1 yarn realistically if you're using it as a tensioner, because you have to create the S shape to provide the tension. That being said, it does work. It does provide an even tension. It is tight, even though it is semi-adjustable. It is a little bit uncomfortable, so that's something to take into consideration. If you've got metal allergies, I would say this is the better option to go for. I wouldn't use anything thinner than double knit. Anything thinner than that I think is going to struggle with the tension. Now with the peacock one, this for me definitely wins the looks. It's very, very pretty. It's currently, I believe, £3 for 3, so it's actually comparable with the plastic one. I feel like it would last a little bit longer because it is metal. It possibly would irritate your skin if you're allergic to some of the compounds in metal, however. It is adjustable. I don't know how long for, but I would think that once you've adjusted it to your size, you wouldn't need to keep stretching it and closing it shut. It does work as a tension guide. You could probably only realistically fit 1 strand of yarn through the neck of the peacock. It does create a bit of friction around the base as it comes through underneath the tail, but it does work. It creates a slightly looser tension than the plastic tensioner, but that may be how tight it was on my finger. I would say that you couldn't use anything super bulky because it wouldn't fit through the peacock's head or neck area, but overall it does work. Now the last tension guide that I've got is a bit more expensive. This one is £5.29 for 1. It's a little bit more pricey than the others. It's fairly robust as it's made of metal. It's not adjustable, however. It just sits on your finger. You have to push it on fairly snugly to avoid it slipping around. I think if you've got quite small fingers, you may struggle with that. You could probably use more than 1 strand of yarn due to the large openings on the tensioner. However, I did find that sometimes it was a little bit tighter than others with the tension, and it did work, but it wasn't quite as consistent as the other 2 tensioners. It would probably last the longest out of the 3 of them. It is quite bulky on the finger as well, so you wouldn't be able to bend your finger too much with it on there, depending where it's sat. But if you keep your fingers straight, it's not too bad. If you've got very small fingers, if it was on my little finger, for example, it's not going to it's not going to stay on easily and slip around, so that's something to bear in mind also. For me, they've all got pros and cons, but I think the winner has to be the plastic one. It created a very even tension throughout. If my hand is hurting, I think out of the three I would opt to use the plastic one. The second would be the peacock, and I probably wouldn't use the spring option personally. You may find that if you crochet in a different way that you have a different set of results, but this is my experience of using them. I hope this has been helpful. If it has, then please like and subscribe to my channel, and you can catch up with craft tutorials and reviews and craft challenges. Thanks for watching.